Alright, so what we're gonna talk about today in this video is the most important things or steps that you need to take or you need to look into when you are starting boxing late. So that is gonna be making sure that you get good amateur experience, which includes great sparring, making sure that you are on top of social media, building some type of influence online and globally. Also making sure that you're building influence and getting your name out there from a local standpoint, right? Getting to your community, your town to know exactly who you are so you can start to sell those tickets. And then fourth is making sure that you have a healthy lifestyle and you're dialing in on your nutrition as well as your strength and conditioning. Let's get to it. All right, so let's talk about the importance of amateur boxing and getting great amateur experience as well as sparring, right? What happens is a lot of people that start late, and this is a question I always get is like, oh, I'm 35 years old, or I'm 30 years old, I'm 26 years old, and I wanna, turn pro tomorrow. I wanna turn pro by the end of the year, within the next year, I'm giving myself that time frame. Yeah, you can turn pro and your window of opportunity because of your age may be shorter than some, but the thing is, what does it matter if you have a short window if you're losing majority of those fights or you're getting knocked out? It doesn't matter. So that's where the amateur experience really starts to come into play, and it's important because what's going to happen is it's going to teach you how to fight different styles, exactly what different styles is out there. Maybe you'll get enough amateur experience to where you can start to compete on an international level, or maybe you're making enough money to where you can travel, and when you travel to different countries or maybe different states, you could go to those gyms and you could spar. But it's extremely important. If we look back at history, right, and we look at fighters who did not have a decent amateur background, and I'm not saying great, I'm not talking about hundreds of fights, 200, 300, 400 fights. No, I'm talking maybe 20, 30, 40 fights. A lot of those guys, at some point, depending on talent level and coaching, they can then go to have great pro careers and make decent money off of the sport. But then if you look at some of those guys who they come out the gate, they may have had 3, 4 amateur fights, or in some cases, no amateur fights, and they turn pro. If you look at some of those guys' record, they end up not being a successful career. And that leads me to the question of, if you do want to be a pro boxer, what is your goal in boxing? Is it to make money? Is it to just say that you are a pro boxer? Or is it just to get a couple fights and check it off your bucket list? Or is it to honestly just be the best and money doesn't matter? All of those are going to dictate exactly how many amateur fights you have, the experience, and how you progress from that point forward. So my recommendation would be, if you are truly trying to turn pro and be a professional boxer or box as a career because you truly want to be the best, and at that point I say fight in every single amateur show, one night show that you can, but even more important, make sure you try and get to as many national tournaments as you possibly can, because that's where you're going to find not only the different styles of fighting, but you'll also find that you'll get some of the best competition. Depending on where you're located at, you may not have a #1 or a top rank or a nationally ranked guy in your city, but if you go to nationals, you can guarantee that the #1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guy is gonna be out there. And in those situations, you will get an opportunity to see what some of the best in the country look like and be able to gauge your skill set to see exactly if you can compete at that level. Because I can guarantee you, if you're getting blown out of the water by the number 5, 6, 7, 8 guy, the chances of you really succeeding at a very high level in the pros is highly unlikely. So just make sure you go to them national tournaments, and not 1 or 2, try and get as many as you can. I would say 5 to 6, and then go from there. Not saying if you don't get them, you are not going to be successful, but the likelihood of that happening is very unlikely. All right, so making sure that you are known in your city and maybe a few cities that are surrounding your city is extremely important, especially when you're talking about starting off late and then becoming a pro. Because let's say, you do get all of the amateur experience, but it just so happens that you don't get signed by a big promotion, and now you're fighting on some of the local club shows. Being known as a fighter and knowing that you fight around your local city with the local businesses is extremely important, or even at schools, because then at that point you have somewhere that you can start to sell tickets. If you have a regular job or you're working a 9 to 5, everybody at your workplace should know that you box. Talk to them, communicate with them, because those can be ticket sales. Whatever school you may have graduated from, if you graduated and you're alumni of that high school, maybe that middle school, and they remember you, those are also good places that maybe you can even go and speak to some of the kids about what you're doing, because it may be something that they're interested in, but you can start to draw an audience and the attention of those people to where you can then sell tickets, because ticket sales start to become extremely important. Not only do promoters want people that can sell tickets because it's gonna make them money, but also very early on, if you're independent and you don't have a manager or promoter, it can control or give you control over who you choose to fight. And at that point, you can select your opponents and make your road to the top a little bit easier. Another huge part is making sure that your lifestyle is in line. So when I say lifestyle in line, you're doing your strength training, and when I say strength training, I don't mean just lifting extremely big, heavy weights, anything like that. Not that these are heavy, but making sure that you are doing proper strength training, making sure you're getting your mobility in. You are also focused on recovery, and that's becoming part of it. Not just going hard just for no reason, for the sake of going hard, but being smart with your workouts. Also making sure that your nutrition is in order, because the nutrition and then the strength and conditioning component, they go hand in hand. One really doesn't work without the other, and you can minimize those gains. And when you're starting late, efficiency and being able to make sure you get the most out of every workout or out of your plans is going to be huge. The big things about the strength and conditioning as well as the nutrition is that it's going to minimize injuries. Now, you seen in my last video, I said that I have chondromalacia in my right knee, but I didn't mention that I also have a partial tear in my labrum, a partial tear in my rotator cuff. I have a few injuries that have crept up over the years. And as you get older, the likelihood of injury, of joint issues, things like that start to increase. So the only way that you could kind of combat that is to make sure that you're doing proper strength training, but you're really focused on building some stability, building your foundational muscles, and making sure that you have the proper nutrition to fuel your body, right? The thing is, if we're not eating an adequate amount of protein, for instance, we don't grow enough muscles, but we also don't recover the muscle. So and then when we do things like boxing, we either lose strength or we end up tearing the muscle so much that we injure ourselves. We want to minimize that. I think for any fighter, but especially for fighters who are starting late in boxing, social media has become a very big part of the game, or at least I would say that social media can yield a ton of benefits for you. Now, I think from a pure boxing perspective, one of the biggest benefits that you can get from social media is the fact that you can possibly be discovered by a manager or a promoter. See, now the thing is that a lot of these managers and promoters are on social media as well, and they are looking for people that are winning nationals, some of the upcoming amateurs. I think right now that is one of the key ways that a manager or promoter is staying on top of exactly who is who in the boxing game without actually going to a national tournament or maybe some of the local tournaments, state tournaments that are out there. So another thing about social media and growing that influence is that outside of just your local town, now you can have the influence of possibly garnering an audience that is national or maybe even global. So that lends to the part of if you're fighting in another state, no matter what state you're going in, you could potentially sell tickets. And remember that situation of the manager or promoter and you having to be able to cover the cost. If you do not have those, you still may be able to sell a good amount of tickets depending on how big your audience is, or maybe you can even work out a deal if it's being live streamed, you being able to sell live streams to a very big audience and bring in money that way, not just ticket sales. And then it comes the benefit that I think people care the most about, that's sponsorships and brand deals. And I think, of course, because what comes with that is there's a dollar sign that's attached to it, right? So you get to actually make money off of that. Now, sponsorships and brand deals are not as easy to get as people think. I could tell you as somebody who has a decent social media following now that yes, a lot of brands do reach out to me, but those are more for gifted collaborations, meaning that they will give me products in exchange for me making a video that I'm either using their products or I'm talking about their products. But when you combine maybe some of those brand deals with the fact that you will be fighting on, let's say, a local network or stream to a pretty big audience, then you could talk about getting the brand's product in front of a lot of eyes that normally they may not have the opportunity to get in front of. And outside of the fact that you can make money from, brand deals and sponsorships, on a per fight basis, the big thing is that you can possibly work out partnerships, of course, depending on the influence and the amount of engagement that you have. You may be able to work out deals to where you are getting paid on a consistent basis monthly from several brands, which means at that point that will give you more time to be able to focus on boxing. It may be something where you can make or garner enough money that you don't have to work a 9-to-5 job, and then boxing and boxing content can become your job, or social media can become part of your job, which then gives you more time to be in the gym and focus solely on boxing. Because truly what happens is there are a lot of very talented boxers, but sometimes they may not have the right management, or they may end up having to work in a job or multiple jobs in order to support their lifestyle or to provide for a family. And then the lifestyle that they are living ends up being the downfall for them as a boxer. Not necessarily to any fault of their own, but it just so happens that circumstance and the need for money to provide for their family becomes a hindrance in their boxing career. So when used correctly, social media can actually be a huge benefit, not only to make you money fight per fight, but can also end up giving you a way to be able to have enough time to put your all in the box. boxing. And another benefit of building a social media influence or building a big audience is the fact that you can build a business outside of boxing. Now, yeah, we all potentially may start boxing and want to be world champions and be the best, or potentially even make millions of dollars with the sport. But the fact is that what happens after that? Because boxing is a sport that a lot of times, if you are not fighting in boxing, you are not making money. If you're not in a training camp as a sparring partner for a bigger name that is paying for sparring, then you're not making money. So having this gigantic influence and having this market of people that you have accessibility to and like, know, and trust you, you can then potentially build a digital product, you can build a physical product, or you can have a service-based business that you can then start to build outside of boxing and use that to make money either while you're boxing or when you finish. Now, I know it's a lot to work on, but try and take into account all four of these things because they will all be huge benefits for you, especially if you are starting late in the sport. Right? The thing is about starting late in the sport is not that you can't become a world champion or you can't achieve any of the goals that you may seek if one of those goals is even making money, but you just have to be very smart and efficient with the way that you do it. And if you don't have a great community, a team around you, and you definitely feel like you need some help with those things or you need advice or you would like to learn more about social media or building a network, I have created a community for fighters where there are a bunch of people maybe much like yourself that's in the same position that have very similar goals. In this community, you will have access to me, as well as I do live streams every single week about specific topics. I do fight reviews and fight studies, as well as some technical reviews. If you feel like that will benefit you, and if you find interest in it, definitely look in the description below and you'll find a link to the community. It's only $10 a month, which I feel like is a very reasonable price to get some of the information that you will be able to get, as well as gain access to me. Now, I know this was a pretty long video. I definitely hope that everyone who watched it, especially if you got to this point, that you have gotten some value. And if you have, definitely make sure you give this video a like, as well as subscribe to the channel. If you would like to, turn on notification bell so you can get alerted whenever I create a new video. And as usual, keep working on your boxing techniques, your fundamentals. And it's your boy Kenyon. I'm out.